University of the District of Columbia with the mission of rediscovering the history of Washington, D.C., while drilling down on touchstone issues of the day, issues that have perennially plagued our nation. And because of the consequential nature of this election cycle, IPPH On Air is hosting a special election series for 1 month. And so each Monday through November the 16th at 3 p.m. or thereabouts, you will see the live stream state of play with essentially the same distinguished co-anchors of today. And then later in the week, we will host podcasts featuring experts in voter registration, voter disinformation, intelligence, or even the rules of the House should this election end up before the Congress. But before I reintroduce our distinguished co-anchors, because we're on the eve of the election, we want to bring you an up-to-date report from a battleground state, the great state of Pennsylvania. And we are very lucky to have Karen Johansson with us today. She was the executive director of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. She was also the campaign manager of Senator Tammy Baldwin, and she is now with the Biden-Harris campaign, focused particularly on the western arm of Pennsylvania. Thank you so very much, Karen Johansson, for being with us today.
Mayor, it's a great pleasure to be here. I should say I live 1 block from UDC when I'm not here in Pennsylvania, so it's especially wonderful to be with you.
It's great of you to be here. And, Pennsylvania is viewed to be a critical state. Is it still the critical must-win state?
I think so. I think, there were 4 states, big states that we lost. I'm saying we as a Democrat. And those were Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Now, I think Florida is a tough climb, but if we win the other 3, Joe Biden will become president. Obviously, if you take Pennsylvania's 20 electoral votes away, you've got to replace those. And that's not as easy as, there's so many states in play. And if you win something to replace Pennsylvania, fine, but there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. So Pennsylvania is extremely important.
So what region of Pennsylvania do you think will determine the outcome of the election for Pennsylvania?
Well, that's a hard question. There's so many, the city of Philadelphia is essential to keep the turnout up. The 21% of the vote in the collar counties around Philadelphia are very important. Where I am in the West is in Allegheny County, which is a blue county, getting our turnout out up here, but it's nothing in Pittsburgh like Philadelphia. And then there's the other thing, which is not lose by as much in these other counties as Hillary Clinton did. Barack Obama won the state of Pennsylvania by getting about 36% in those red counties. She got about 26%. She got 89% of the Black vote in Philadelphia. He got 98%. Now, getting 98% of anything is a pretty tall order, but that's why she underperformed there. So that's to say there's not one single place that is totally essential. You can't just bump the turnout up in Philadelphia and ignore the other parts of the state.
So let me ask you sort of one last question, because I know you're in the middle of an election and the election is tomorrow. But given the massive turnout, is there still any chance that the state legislature, as many have speculated, might intercede, abort the tabulation of the mail-in ballot and even go so far as to offering an alternative slate of electors?
Well, there's many hurdles here. Number one is the number of absentee ballots. The state reformed the election process to allow people to vote by mail with no excuse. They had never had that before. So you have millions of people who sent in their ballot, but they didn't reform the system of counting them. So you cannot begin to count them until 7 a.m. on election day. Some of the counties will start right then. Some are not going to start counting the absentee ballots till after the polls have closed. So we're really not going to know what happened. There was a court ruling. The Republicans tried to prevent any ballot received after Election Day, but postmarked by Election Day, not to be counted. But now they have until Friday. But those votes will be segregated and probably be the subject of a court suit. So we're a long way away from
Okay.
electors are supposed to be all members of the party that won. Sorry. Okay.
No.
So
I
anyway,
think we
my
just had a
point
bit
is,
of a
yes.
signal problem.
Oh, okay. So there's been noise about the Republican-controlled legislature appointing their own electors, although most of the legislative leaders said they weren't going to do that. Who knows what it's going to be like December 14th when all the electors are supposed to gather and vote for their state's nominee. So
it's hard to know.
It's hard to know.
Yeah, well, it's a very busy time. I know it's very intense for you, and we really, really appreciate your taking the time. So Karen Johansson, thank you very much. And IPPH on Air is very grateful, and good luck and stay safe.
Well, I'm going right back outside. It's freezing today, and launch some more canvassers. I'm inside a supporter's house, and she asked me to wear a mask. So that's what I'm doing.
That's what we all got to do.
But thank you very much, Mayor. It was an honor to be with you.
Well, it was our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And now we're going to introduce our distinguished co-anchors. And we begin with Michael Steele. Michael Steele was the former chairman of the Republican National Committee. He is an MSNBC political analyst, and he is also the co-chair of the Senior Advisory Committee for IPPH. Welcome, Michael.
Good to be with you, Mayor.
Karen Tramontano, who was the former Deputy Chief of Staff for President William Jefferson Clinton. She's an international political analyst, and she's also co-chair of the Senior Advisory Committee of IPPH.
Thank you, Mayor. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. And Reverend Mark Thompson. Mark is the host of the podcast Make It Plain. He's also a regular on MSNBC and a distinguished member of the IPPH Senior Advisory Committee. Mark, are you with us here?
I am with you. Good afternoon.
Well, great to have you. So, delighted that all of you are with us and on this momentous occasion, a day before the election, with the incredible voter turnout. Is there any chance whatsoever that a foreign player, such as Russia or Iran or China, could possibly influence the outcome of this election? Michael, what do you think?
Absolutely. In fact, an alert was just put out on air about an hour ago, just reminding folks that this is a real possibility, that the time immediately before the election and immediately after the election is when our system is potentially vulnerable to attack from foreign adversaries that include Russia, Iran, China, and others. So there is no doubt about that. We can't take any of that lightly. 2016 stands out in stark relief of what we could be in for, because we already know that these actors are out there and capable of engaging in our elections. So we're looking to our secretaries of state. We're looking to the way our system is structured with 50 individual federal elections, if you will, makes it much more difficult, but doesn't mean that they won't try.
No, absolutely. 51, don't forget the District of Columbia.
Yeah, absolutely, 51.
Karen, what do you think? Do you think there's any chance of interference from a foreign player?
Yes, I agree with Michael. I mean, I think the time for that interference is at the beginning of the election process with misinformation, as they did in 2016, discouraging people to vote for various reasons, analyzing information as to how to put those messages out and which constituencies to reach with different messages, to just dim the vote. As Pratt Wiley was saying in your interview of him, getting that vote down helps Republicans. And so foreign adversaries like Russia in 2016 tried to accomplish that, and the vote was down. So it had an impact. I mean, with the huge turnout, I think we could say they're not as effective as they were in 2016, but I really worry about their second point of leverage, which is after tomorrow, and putting out information that jeopardizes the integrity of the election, and just ringing that bell and sounding that note over and over and over again. And unfortunately, our president is doing that, and foreign actors are echoing that. And that's my biggest concern right now, that the integrity of this election will be jeopardized.
Yeah. How about you, Mark?
Well, sounds like somebody's outside my window with a loudspeaker encouraging people to get out to vote. So that's a good thing, I guess. Sorry for the interference. But I think we're already seeing it quite obviously. It can get worse. We're seeing it in the targeted disinformation and suppression, especially as that targets African Americans and African American men. And we have, in the words of Malcolm Nance, someone who fits the description of an unwitting agent, at least in the White House, who is fomenting destabilization. Because I think we have to be clear, Putin's goal is ultimately destabilization. It's not simply getting a figure he wants in the White House, but to destabilize this country, destabilize the European countries, NATO, and what have you. So we know most states, the majority of them, count their mail-in ballots the day of and in the days after. That's why certification doesn't take place at midnight all over the country on election night. So when he says we've got to stop the counts, these mail-in ballots are fraudulent, he's already planting the seeds of doubt and fomenting destabilization with his own words. So he's doing that bidding. If Russia has something more aggressive planned, unlike the Obama White House that tried to prevent that from happening 4 years ago, this White House will probably just let it go forward. So I think we have to be very, very concerned.
Mayor, can I jump?
Go ahead, Michael.
Can I jump on that real quick, because I don't want people to lose what Mark is saying, because it is critically important to the psychology that's being played out right now, right, and the messaging that's being played out right now. Listen to what Donald Trump and his ilk, and that's the polite way to put it, are telling us, that the only way Donald Trump loses this election is if there is fraud. Think about that. The only way he loses is if there's fraud. No, Donald Trump, the only way you lose is when the American people vote you out of office. That's how you lose an election in this country. It's when you are voted out. But their narrative is one that tells us that the only way he loses is if they're fraud. The only way Joe Biden wins is if there is fraud. That is counter to everything we know to be true about our system, even with interference. This is the same man who complained about winning his election in 2016. So I think we really need to listen to what Mark is saying here about what is the messaging and the motivations involved here, because he's trying to punk us on something very fundamental. He's trying to dupe us into believing something that goes against everything we already know to be true. So I really don't want people to lose sight of that Donald Trump, if he loses tomorrow night, because we, the people, will have unelected him, not because of some fraud, not because of vote by mail, not because of absentee ballots, but because the American people, when this election is certified, will have unelected him.
Well, let me do a follow-up, because again, this massive turnout, is there a chance for mischief by institutional players? Now, we've already, some have suggested the president, but state and local officials, including federal officials. Is there an opportunity for real mischief, just overlooking the popular vote? Karen?
Well, I think we're already seeing it, right? I mean, and you have the Republican Party that went into state court where they lost to challenge almost 200,000 votes. And so now they're going into federal court. So we could have the federal judiciary playing an oversized role right now, especially because of the distribution of the judges currently, with President Trump having having packed a lot of these, excuse my language here, but having packed a lot of the federal courts. Right now, we have the Supreme Court that, Roberts has been able to convince his fellow jurists to affirm state law, in state courts, not affirm federal courts. But you could have the judiciary playing an oversized, very detrimental role in this. The Postmaster General, the Inspector General for the Postmaster General, has found lost ballots. You have ballots, mail-in ballots in storage facilities. I mean, anybody can. I mean, this is unprecedented in terms of the number of people who have voted by mail. And a lot of these states and boards of elections are not even ready for a security point of view to protect these ballots. So, I think there's a lot of danger out there, and we've got to really, really stay focused on the fight.
Well, Mark, I'm going to ask you the same question, but at the same time, I'm going to ask you this. Mm-hmm. Given all of this upheaval, is there a chance for violence tomorrow? Mark?
I think, unfortunately, there is. I was just in downtown in Lower Manhattan a little while ago, and all of the windows that are boarded up, people are getting ready. People are nervous. Yes, there is. We've seen some of Trump supporters even try to run Biden's buses off the road. I think we have to be very, very concerned about this. And again, that's part of the destabilization agenda, is to create, as Michael said, a level of anxiety and fear. And prayerfully, that will not scare people away from the polls, because that happens too. People feel if there's something that's going to be happening to them, then they may not go vote. I hope that's not the case. I hope people actually have the courage to do that tomorrow. So yeah, I think we have to be concerned about that. Real quickly though, Karen said, excuse me, when she used the word when she shouldn't have. She said packed. She used packed in the proper context. When the mainstream media asked Biden and Harris, are you going to pack the court, when they have never referred to what Trump and McConnell have done as court packing, is completely inappropriate. They are the ones that have packed the federal judiciary over these many years with over 200 some odd unqualified judges. So I think that in terms of institutional players, to your original question, we have to watch the court. I think that there's some votes on the Supreme Court that would be more than happy to invalidate mail-in ballot counting beyond midnight on Tuesday, November 3rd. But here's the irony, and just how desperate they are for destabilization. Many Republicans vote mail-in ballots, including 7, Michael knows this, 7 significant counties in Pennsylvania. So are you going to cut their votes off? And I think that his own constituency needs to realize that he does not even act in their own best interests. He doesn't care about them and their votes.
That's what's so dumb about what members of my party are doing. As someone who has, I learned the art of politics growing up in Washington, D.C. from the likes of David Clark, Joe Yeldell, Marion Barry, And especially Marion Barry always taught me as a Republican. I was a Republican at the time, so he had sympathy on me, but he taught me some of the tricks of the trade, which was learn to work your vote and learn to turn that vote out. And how you do that is by all means necessary and available. So that means getting them to the polls, getting ballots in their hands if they're living in assisted living facilities. You turn that vote out. So that is a lesson that Republicans, and certainly that I know to be true, because we have used it, Mayor. It is what Mark is saying is so incredibly true, and which is why what the Republicans are allowing Donald Trump to do right now is so short-sighted and so stupid, because those ballots that they are trying to challenge, those ballots that they're trying to throw out, have Republican senators running for re-election. Hello, they have Republican senators who are in tight races in Colorado and Nevada and Georgia and North Carolina, right? And they're looking to throw those ballots out. Well, guess what's going to happen? That's a recipe for them to lose those seats that they need. Mitch McConnell is not crazy about this idea, trust me, of Donald Trump challenging all of these ballots, because he knows those down ballot Republicans will also lose those races potentially, because those ballots won't get counted. They won't get counted.
What are your concerns? Are you concerned about violence tomorrow, Michael?
Oh, absolutely, I am. And we've already seen it, as Mark referenced, you know, with the Biden bus and the videos out there online being challenged by these numbnuts driving up on the bus, slowing the bus down. So yeah, the Trump's team, a lot of his people have fomented this nonsensical violence. This is the first election where we're actually worried about people taking up arms against neighbor and friends over who they voted for. We've never had that. At the worst point, lowest point in the 1960s, in the 68, challenges and the riots of 68, no one worried about attacking folks at polling places on election day. I mean, so this idea that's being fermented by this president is dangerous. It is anti-American. It is certainly anti-voter rights and representation. And so my hope is, and I agree with both Karen and Mark, that voters will stand up and they will stand proud and they will vote and they will not instigate and they will not foment and play into this violence. And so that's my prayer for tomorrow. But yeah, there are elements out there, Mayor, who would very much want to see this thing go off the rails so that they can then point fingers and go, see, that's why those ballots need to be invalidated. See, that's why the votes in that Democratic precinct need to be discounted. And that shouldn't be what we do.
Well, Karen, I'm going to ask you the same question, but a second one as well. Are you concerned about violence tomorrow? And also, what two states do you think we need to focus upon?
So, like Michael and Mark have said, I'm very concerned. If Trump loses, I'm very concerned that there will be violence. And he's been tweeting and applauding the violent and aggressive tactics of people. So on his team, the city, as you know, right now is a ghost town. I mean, everything's boarded up. And that just sort of feeds on itself too. So I'm concerned about the way we look. We're prepared for it, and it just sort of invites it. And I am being very prayerful along with Michael. In terms of states, I'm looking at North Carolina and Georgia, and not because they're pivotal, but I think I'm keeping my eye on a couple of the early states, because those are states that the president really needs. And if we see a Biden victory or even a slim margin, and those are two states that the president won by a significant margin, I think that's going to sort of give us a guide as to what's going to happen the rest of the day and the rest of the evening and maybe the next couple of days. So Georgia and North Carolina is where I'm going to stay focused. Yeah.
Okay, Mark, quickly, what are two would you say we should focus on?
My two are probably three: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I think if Biden wins those, he's in pretty good shape. Who knows what's going to happen in Florida? I don't know that we should get our hopes up about Florida being resolved unless, Biden just runs away with it. And if that happens, it's an early night.
Yeah.
I think we're in for a surprise in Texas. And frankly, just quickly, aside from the presidency, if Mike Espy is close, Mike Espy is doing better than Amy McGrath in Kentucky. If there were a way for Mike Espy to squeak out a win in Mississippi, to get the first black senator from Mississippi since Reconstruction, that would be as historically significant as electing the first black president. He's got a shot, and he may surprise us too.
How about you, Michael? What are the two?
My two would be, I would agree with Karen on Georgia. Georgia is an interesting play, both for the presidential as well as the two Senate seats that are up and available there. The Republicans will not get a majority of those two seats. In fact, I think the Democrats are better positioned to take one or both of those seats, which would be huge from all kinds of levels. And my second state is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania for the Biden team is very, very important, particularly if you discount Florida and give the president an advantage in Florida, which sort of historically is where that lies. Pennsylvania becomes important of the three states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And I think watching that would be very, very important to see how the night goes. To Mark's point, if Vice President Biden wins Florida, y'all just, pop the corks and take the night off because it doesn't matter what happens after that. But absent that, I think Georgia and Pennsylvania for me are going to be fun to watch because the potential upside for a broader margin for Vice President Biden, who I think will win regardless, I think is there.
So your thinking is Biden will win the election?
I believe all the indices are there. This is not 2016, despite what a lot of people are kind of saying about hidden votes and pockets here and there. I think given the fact that 93 million Americans have already voted in this election, that you're still going to have a significant turnout of Democrats and Republicans on election day. And I'm not buying this notion that every newly registered Republican is voting for Donald Trump, as a lot of Republicans are pushing out there. I'm a Republican who voted for Biden. I just think that the vice president is well positioned, but it is a big caution given what we were talking about before about how certain state actors may try to manipulate on behalf of the president and certain foreign actors may try to do the same.
Karen, I'm going to ask you the same question in spite of the fact we see President Trump moving ahead in Iowa. Some polls suggest he's moved ahead in Florida. What is your thinking on tomorrow? Who will win this election?
Well, I think Biden is still well positioned. The polls have, there is this outlier poll by a very reputable firm in Iowa that puts President Trump up 7 points. And that's a huge spread.
Yeah.
So I must say that gave me some pause. The question which Michael raised is, are there voters out there? Is there movement around independence? Are there people that, haven't voted before? And that's where that hidden margin is. I don't think it's 7 points. There may be some movement, but I think Vice President Biden is got enough of a margin himself in those states to protect against the loss. So I do think Vice President Biden pulls it out tomorrow.
And Mark, I'm ask you the same. Do you think Biden wins, even though there have been a number of expressed concern that the voter turnout among African Americans in a few battleground states is still not as strong as they had hoped? What is your thinking?
I think, as Karen has said, the polling margins are big enough to be outside of the threshold of chaos. I think when Hillary Clinton ran, when it was tighter, that creates more room for chaos and mischief and some hiccups in some states. But he's polling well, and in some states even more than 5%. So I think that will protect him. Again, very cautious about that because we've been, we all have PTSD from some of us still have from 2000 and even before then. But I think it looks very, very good, and there's a lot of belief and optimism out there. We pray that it comes so, because I don't think the nation's morale could stand it if it were to go the other way and Donald Trump were to be reelected.
Well, Michael Steele, Karen Tramontano, and Mark Thompson, you have been terrific. As always, your insights are very, very helpful. I also want to thank our IPPH on-air audience and encourage you to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, Politics, Policy, and History. That's at Politics, Policy, and History for Facebook and Instagram, and at Politics, Policy 1 for Twitter. We will be back again next Monday, and we'll be back again the following Monday. And hopefully we'll know who is the next president of the United States well before then. Thank you all. Be certain to vote and be safe. Thanks so much.